but a special thanks to Brian for sliding on down here. And we've done this once before. We did it last year, and the reviews, was it last year that we did it?
Yeah,
the beginning of this year.
That one was a lot.
Yeah, and we it's funny. It's you normally are out of here around 8 o'clock because there's some Q&A at the end, and you guys want to come up and ask some questions. But that one was felt like 8 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah, that went for like 3 hours.
Yeah,
Right.
It ran long.
It's just crazy because if we all own boats or Garmin watches, we probably, like our iPhones or Samsungs or whatever you have, you probably know how to use 10% of it, and 5% of that is correctly. Some of it's just by chance and luck, and I feel like that's where we're at with our electronics, and it doesn't matter if you're using them for navigational purposes or fishing purposes. It's not just a lot. You just got to learn it and practice it, and then practice makes perfect. And that's the difference in catching all these big fish that Mark and Kayla and Tim and most of you guys post on your social media. But Kayla did offer to sing the national anthem to get us started tonight.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I'm just kidding.
Still have a chance to run out of here.
Darn it, she doesn't have a mic. And then also our sales team that's sticking around to learn, because this is our passion, and things change, and we want to learn the new technology and the old ways to use the old technology. And just thanks once again on behalf of Legendary Marine. We've been doing this now for eight seasons, and it sure has grown a whole lot. And it wouldn't have grown this way if we wouldn't have partnered up with Half Hitch Tackle. If we'd have tried to do this on our own. And Tim, none of us get paid to come out here, and we do it just for our passion and wanting to share our education with everybody here to make them better. So we will share how to use the electronics. We won't share the numbers that are on the electronics. Is that fair? All right, you guys have a wonderful night. I'll pass this back to Tim and Mark.
Thanks, Todd.
Yep.
Thank you, Todd.
We want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Kayla still has some in her basket. Do you still have some left? If anybody doesn't have one of the things we passed out at the very beginning, this is a return 'em right kit. There's a card inside, or on the back of the Huggy, a QR code. You go to that website, watch the little video. It's about 8 minutes long or something.
Pretty easy.
It's really easy.
A foolproof quiz.
Watch the little video, answer the little questions. They're going to send, Return 'em Right is going to send you a free $100 release kit just for watching and answering the questions on that 8-minute video. So really nice little gift from Return 'em Right.
Which are legally required to be on your boat when reef fishing in the Gulf or in the bay.
Right. Just a little bit about fishing before we get started with Brian here. Everybody knows that the rodeo started this month. If you haven't entered, you can enter up until the last day of the rodeo. It's a great opportunity to get kids, grandkids, wives, seniors, and yourself out fishing. The rodeo is about fun. So, definitely consider registering in that, getting out there, coming to see us at the dock. Weigh-ins are every day from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's just a great opportunity on the water. We did find out, unfortunately, that groupers are going to close on basically the midnight of the 18th. Most of the publications say it closes on the 19th. That means it's actually closed on the 19th. So definitely, as the rodeo goes, go out there and get your groupers early and save some of the other stuff for the end of the tournament when there's not as much to do.
Yep. Pretty easy.
Yep. Well, how we want to do this? We just want to start down the little outline, or
so to try to keep some. Everybody knows Tim, right?
Yep.
And I'm Mark, and this is Brian from GARMIN.
Yep.
So he's really the expert here. I think I'm pretty good with a lot of this stuff, but he's the guy that I call when I don't know the answer to something. So,
but he gets a lot more time on the water than I do with this stuff.
So thank you for doing all this.
My pleasure.
To try to keep some kind of order. And I think a lot of you guys were here at that one that we did for 3 hours last year. So to keep it some kind of order and kind of get some of the things that I use my chart plotter for, I made an outline of what I do. So I'm going to be reading off of this a lot more than I normally do today. But I think we'll just start going through it this way. And the first thing I had on this was about pages and charts.
Pages, combo screens.
Yep.
Yep. So combo screens, pretty straightforward. So don't watch me down here, watch up there. When I go home and I select combo, we've got a bunch of combos preloaded in there based on the equipment that you actually have on the boat. You can always go to the plus at the very right-hand side and add a combo. From here, we'll just leave the name as combo 8. You can select the layout. These are all the choices you've got on your layout. If you've got a larger screen than a 12-inch, that 6-way grid is really nice if you only got one screen. But we'll go with this guy right here. So now we can also, by moving that 4-way keypad, adjust the size of what our combos look like. So I can then tap to add, and put a sonar in there, and we'll do side view because that's a good top to bottom screen. Over here we can put charts, and we'll do relief shading. And then down below we can just put gauges, and we'll do fuel. Select done. And it's pretty much that simple. Now, when we go back home and we're still on combos, there's our combo 8, and it's always there to pull up. Another nice thing, I can now, if that's a screen I want to go to a lot. Are you reading me good? Yeah. Okay. So what I did is I pressed and held combo 8, and that adds it to pinned. So now if I close that, pinned are the 2 screens to the left and right of home. Anybody here using those at all?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
4 hands out of this many people. Okay. So the nice thing is, so now you're not having to go home and select these things. These things ride on a carousel to the left and right. And there's the one we just created, and it's going to go back to charts, sonar, and you can just scroll through it. It just makes it a lot quicker. You can put your top 5 screens in there, left or right, and access them that way.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but the reason that I brought that up first is because we're going to get into details on sonar settings that I use on my boat and all kinds of like details on stuff. But on my boat, the 243 Everglades, I have a 8612, which is probably this one, and a CL7. So I like to have my primary, I don't have 5 screens across my dashboard like some of you guys do. So I like to set up my chart to be able to use, in my opinion, as effectively as I can.
Right.
And also to use my CL7
As a secondary screen.
as a secondary instead of just the engine data. So
And on those pin screens, you can have you set up to 5 pin screens.
No, I just said you pick your top 5. You can, I think I've got as many as 20 in there. I don't know what the true upper limit is.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that.
Yeah. So, I try to keep it a manageable number because, otherwise I'm just scrolling back and forth, and it would have actually been quicker to do the 3 button presses to the screen I wanted. So I don't put any more than 5 on mine, but you're welcome to put as many as you want. The other thing that we want to talk about is for all of you that have multiple screens, is anybody using smart modes? 1, 2. So smart mode is cool. How many have multiple screens? Okay, this is cool. So smart mode is this little guy right here, second over from the right. It's there every time you press home. So what happens is, out of the box, you're going to have a couple of preloads. You'll have cruising, docking, anchoring, fishing. I've added fishing too. So what smart mode does is I've got this screen networked with this screen. Is with 1 button press, it changes both screens. So if I go back to home and I press fishing 2, now everything I want to see when I go fishing is there. I've got split zoom, I've got my chart, I've got my live scope, and I've got side view. So just 1 button press. When we go there, you're going to again have add layout. So now you bring that up, You can pick your layout, you know, if you want to get fancy. Let's go back there. Let's put, ooh.
Ooh. Tim, your hands are cold.
So now if you've got these, ouch. So now if you've got these two side by side, I've just selected one where I've got two smaller ones on the outside here, two smaller ones on the outside here, and two large ones in the middle. You know, and again, so I can, you know, put a single range, range A, tap and add a chart here and do relief shading, put some fuel gauges up there, tap down here, do, let's do a little sonar and do traditional. And we can do sonar and do clear view. And one more sonar. And we'll do split frequency. So now everything's populated. I can press done. And we'll call that layout 6, done. Back, done. So now, layout 6 is there. And there it is. But now if these were side by side, I'm not going to do that. But you get the idea. You can make this as customizable for your boat and what you want to see with one button press. You know, it can be docking. If you got cameras and you got a wind meter, you can see your camera and your wind meter. You know, if you're cruising and you want to see chart and at tide stations, you can do that. So all these units, the processors are built into the screen. So it's an integral unit. We do make a black box system, and then you can buy pretty much whatever screen you want. Those, you know, that's a much different use than what we're doing here for the most part, but it is an option. You know, when we go to the Fort Lauderdale show and Miami show, we've got a black box running a weatherproof touch screen. You know, 42-inch, you know,
That's
I mean,
pretty cool.
you can get crazy. You can get crazy.
And the reason I had that, I mean, obviously, like I said, we'll get into the details on a lot of this stuff, but the reason I had that at the top of mind, that saved me a couple of times. And I don't, just say you lose your screen for whatever reason, and I actually lost the touch screen on one of my units when I was pretty far offshore. And obviously it's the Gulf. You can head in any direction and hit land, and typically use your compass. I mean, I know where Destin was, but luckily using my CL7 and that smart mode, I got back exactly where I wanted to be for so I could keep fishing for the rest of the day. Because I was on sonar.
Yep.
And the way we run sonar on the boats is with the full water column and then a bottom lock. And I was like, well, I guess I could run a chart off of my other one, but like some of you guys know me pretty well. I'm a little particular with my boat, so to be able to have a little bit of redundancy to get back where I wanted to be, that's definitely something I've used on mine a lot. And yeah, actually, while you have that up, that's the next thing I had on there, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the split zoom screen. But I guess you have this on your screen already.
Yeah. So this is one that you should be using if you're not taking advantage of split screens. This is something that you should definitely be using on every trip you go on. Because what I find is a lot of people drive right by fish. They pull up on a spot and they don't, you know, if you pulled up and just saw the right-hand side of the screen, you may or may not stop there. But when you have on the left side here, this is 210 feet of water, this is only 30 feet of the bottom, you get a much clearer picture of what's there. Well, if you'll stop and fish, on natural bottom, the snappers and the groupers, they live up underneath the rocks and the ledges and everything. And after you fish this same spot for about 10 minutes, now it looks like this. That's the exact same spot 10 minutes later. I can catch groupers there.
And you have it set up now showing that, right?
Yep. That's what we see up there. So on the right-hand side, we've got the entire water column, and then on the left-hand side, we've got that zoomed box, and we can get it as tight as we want on there, you know, and it's on bottom lock, but you could move, if you're, say you're fishing, you know, in 200 feet, what you're looking for is in between 200 and 300 feet in the column, you can zoom in on just that area of the column as well. So.
And that's how we run. I think when I get on someone else's, well, on my boat, it's definitely how it's set up, but on with some of these other settings we'll get into. But I think the first thing we do on anyone's boat is set up a split zoom scenario with bottom lock on one side.
So yeah, so you just change that to manual. Now you can just, you know, run that range if that's where you want to drag bait.
What do you think? Should we get into the details? Gains and frequencies and zooms and ranges and all that?
Well, before you go there, do you want to cover, go back to your split screen there and draw on a blank?
Well, so, all right, well, I guess the answer to that is no. Are you talking A-scope?
Yes.
No, yeah, so that's under appearance. We'll get there.
Okay, you got that under appearance?
Yeah, but so basically in the sonar setup, I guess the first thing is gain, right?
Yep.
And gain is basically just the amount of noise and amount of stuff you see on the screen.
So you're going to have a bunch of choices: up, down, auto low, auto medium, auto high. You know, and we're going to. So if I touch auto high, it doesn't move much. If I can drag that slider all the way up there to 80%, you can see we just got a ton of noise in the water. It's not really doing anybody any good. You know, you can trim it all the way out to no noise, and you're just looking at bottom. You know, I like auto medium. I mean, I don't dig into it that hard, but if you want to, you can, you know, really bring it up or down. But, you know, by that time, all that stuff that you're seeing more than likely is not targets you want to pursue. It's just noise. So auto medium, where do you run?
So it depends. So typically I leave it on auto, and I'd probably recommend for everybody to leave it on some auto thing and just let the machine do what it's designed to do. There are random instances where I will have my gain up pretty high, and I think you in the past have gone up high and back down to where you like it.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is move it up to where the screen is fairly cluttered and then work your way back down.
Because the more noise you end up seeing on there sometimes, and I joke that it's like me looking at the Matrix where I see everything that's happening, but literally, I mean, I'm fishing on my boat for sure, but I stare at my charts a lot. And you can see baits going down, you can see fish coming out of the bottom, you can see everything changing with the addition of other things that you have going on the screen already. But having a little bit higher gain with some extra noise in there does help to determine what's actually happening down there. And obviously with a super low gain, you kind of knock out a lot of the bait fish, a lot of the smaller fish, and only show the bigger marks. But realistically, I just get used to seeing what I'm looking at. So I think for the most part, I probably run it at one of the auto settings, and rarely do I change it, but it's just something to play with on your boat, especially if you're on a spot somewhere or sometime where you know what you're catching, or like outside of snapper season when they're really easy to catch and they're everywhere, to play with it then and try to learn your charts and actually see what you're looking at and play with that gain value.
Yeah. And that's another time to perhaps play with frequency sets on chirp.
Yep.
You know, if you're on a pile of fish and you've caught your limit, but you know there's more of them down there, at that point, do we want to move on to frequency?
Yep, that's actually my next item.
Right on. So let me go back here. On chirp transducers, out of the box, you're going to be running the full range of chirp, whether it's a low, a high, or a medium chirp. You're going to be running that entire range, and it's decimal points of full number frequencies. By pressing close, again, from the sonar page that you're on, select options, frequency, and you can see we've got chirp up there, 180 kilohertz, and then manage frequencies. So at that point, you know, Cooler's full, you got all the meat. Let's go ahead and so now we can do new presets. So we've got available frequencies 140 through 240 kilohertz. At this point, we can start going up in whole numbers. We can't do 0.00, so we could change to 150. Done. So now, back. So now I've got 150 kilohertz. I can look at what those targets look like at 150 kilohertz. If you find a spot just messing around where the species you're after
Goes through a range of frequencies.
yes. Yep, so chirp is compressed high intensity radiated pulse. That's what chirp actually stands for. It's like a government acronym. It's like instead of a 50/200 kilohertz transducer that everybody ran forever, think of 50 kilohertz as one key on a piano, 200 as one, 150 steps higher. So you're just banging 50 kilohertz down, it's going deep, and you're getting that same return up. At 50 kilohertz, we might not see all that stuff on the bottom. Oh, let me change my frequency back to chirp. So at 50 kilohertz, we may not see that target separation that a chirp will give you because we're only running that one frequency down, it's hitting and returning. Targets down at the bottom, close to the bottom, may just paint as bottom at that point. What chirps does is all those frequencies go down, they all come up. It's like taking all 88 keys of the piano and just boom, hitting them at once. They come down, they come back up, we process them, and now we've got a whole bunch more data points to paint a better sonar picture. So as we're going along here, like, if you look at our depth, let me go here, zoom. If we, let me go back, close, get on a different screen here to show this. Split zoom, I want traditional. So I'll press pause and options and zoom, mode, magnify. So now I can take this. So at 300 and some odd feet, we're seeing that target separation off the bottom. I mean, that thing's like, what, 5 feet off the bottom? At 50 kilohertz, it's just going to look like, you may not even see that divot, right? But with chirp, that's what chirp does. All those frequencies get in, they get around the structure, and they come back at different rates of return, and we're able to run that through our program and our processor and then paint a better sonar picture with better target separation. Yep. So that's what chirp is, that's what chirp does, and that's why you use it.
And that's what I run on mine.
Yeah, and just a quick, let me show you that again because everybody's got this feature. If you are out hunting, someone was asking how can you tell the difference between the grouper and the snapper there, right? So on a traditional full page sonar, we can go into options and change our zoom by pressing the 3 buttons, and our mode is magnify. And at that point, when you pinch your fingers open, it opens up that window, and you can move that window all over the screen. You want to close it, you close it, and we press the play button, and we just keep cruising on along. But you can pause your sonar, go back in time, look at that thing, and then, oh yeah, and of course, the best part of it, right? We open that up. Where is that guy living? Let's just pick that guy. So now, add the waypoint. Check. Add the waypoint. I'm sorry, I lost the microphone here. So you add the waypoint, and that's going to put it right in the center of that box. So now, because all sonar, and this kind of rolls into a scope, can everybody hear me?
No.
Fine.
Okay. So, hello? Oh no, it's you too.
Hello, hello, hello.
Uh-oh.
Matt!
Bio break. So, I got green there. Yep.
All right, we're back. We're
Don't
back.
move. You
We're
got
back.
it. So that crosshairs is going to intersect in the middle of that zoom box, and then you can go ahead and mark that as a waypoint. That kind of rolls us into A scope.
I'm not quite on A scope yet,
Okay.
but if you want to, we can deviate.
No, let's go. Let's
So
follow the list.
my train of thought on this was to stay under each menu item.
Okay.
So like when we get into the traditional options, that's your sonar main menu, and chirp or gain frequency. I've never really adjusted beam width.
You can't really. It's just letting you know the beam width of that transducer.
Zoom we talked about with split zoom and bottom lock,
And magnify.
right? And magnify. The next one is range, and range. For me, what I've seen on running on people's boats. Sorry, are you?
Yeah, before we go there, I want to make sure that people understand that they marking a spot when you run over something. This is real. He went over it pretty fast, and I want to just go back to make sure that people understand that. And when you turn on the bottom left, when you turn that off and bring your cursor up, that if you've ran something over, like that big rock right there, you put your cursor right there and hit your enter button, and that's going to put your waypoint in there. And you want to do two things on that waypoint. You want to name it something that you're going to come back and look at it again. I normally name it check and the date.
Yeah, check 248 is what I have on my sonar.
I have check like 923.
So what happens with us though is when and you and I work together pretty well on my boat, because if I'm driving my boat, then you're normally staring at the sonar.
Yeah.
Brings up the crosshairs in the middle there. Put the crosshairs on the spot. And what you don't want to do, so when you're marking something on the chart or in the sonar, you want to press the waypoint icon once you've got the crosshairs up. What you don't want to do is, say you're on your chart, just pick fishing chart here, is press the mark button. If say you're running a split screen, you got sonar and you got your chart up, and if you press mark on the chart side, all you're going to do is mark where the boat is. You're not going to mark anything that you want to go back to. You're going to mark where the boat is. So if you see structure, is this on still? Okay. So if you see structure that you want to get back to, definitely bring it up on the sonar page and mark it by pressing pause, crosshair on top of it, and then you can get back to it.
Good point, Tim.
Yeah, and like I say, mark that check in today's date, and then the next time you're out there and you see that we're close to one of those, drive over there and see if whatever you saw then is still there. If it's not, well, then we can delete that. It may have just been bait or something going by. If you go back a second time, you're still marking fish. Now we need to change, instead of being check, we're going to change the symbol at that time to go with it to something that you recognize.
Yes, sir. Question.
When you get ready,
Let me show you.
You could be in dual screen.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can. Yep. So let's just go here. Combo. Let's see what we got here.
say you got a combo chart.
Yep, there you go.
There we go.
So,
So you got the pause button right there on your sonar. Pause it. And then you can move it there. What you don't want to do is press mark in the bottom tray.
yes, sir. Yep, and the question was, if you're in a combo screen, how can you do that? And the thing, yeah.
Yep, you'll just press pause on that screen.
How you do the pause?
So see the,
Corner.
see the actual pause like on an old cassette player? And then it switches to play.
Yep.
Yep.
Of where the crosshairs are pointing. Yep, and then it'll show as a waypoint. You're right. The next thing I have is about range, and the reason I bring this up is because on a lot of these boats that we're fishing on, once you drive over the edge and you go from 120 feet to 400 feet, there's a couple buttons to push sometimes to find bottom again.
Yep. So we can do a couple things here. We can set our range to whatever we want it to be and just see that range of sonar, or we can set it to auto. Auto is really nice because it's just going to run. You know, so if you know where, and you'll always pick up bottom. But if you're fishing in the shallows, you know, up to a couple hundred feet before it drops off, and you've got your range set because you only want to drive down that far, you can do that. But just don't forget that you've done that, and when you go over the edge, realize, oh, where's the bottom? You know, you'll lose everything after, in this case, you know, 65 feet.
Is there a max it'll read?
Depends on the transducer. So
I took my boat to the Alba Coast and crossing the Gulf Stream. I was like, man, it can't be 300 feet of water.
And the question he asked was, is there a max for depth reading?
And what was the depth you saw?
387.
So
It was locked. It stayed there, and I know we weren't 387.
so, but then when you started coming up, 386, 85, 84. So you may have your depth set, your range set at
max.
387. So yeah, if you set it at auto, yeah, because I mean, with a big transducer, I've got screenshots of 10,000 feet locked on bottom.
Okay.
And one of the things that happens with us is when we're on split zoom, sonar, and this button here. So that's the one that I've found on a lot of people's boats. When that's set to a value instead of auto, is where people will lose bottom.
Yeah, so does everybody see that middle number between the plus and minus sign up there?
On split zoom.
On split zoom, yes. So if you adjust that, right,
That's
it's
probably-
going to change that
that's
number.
Probably where you were.
Switch it back to auto, and that's a quick way of doing it without digging through the menu.
Okay. You guys have any questions? We're getting into the.
So talking about losing bottom, I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask this question. Some people's boats you get on, you run 50 miles an hour, you can still read bottom. Some boats you get on, you run 20 miles an hour and you can't read bottom.
Transducer placement, 100% of the time. Yeah, so what happens is you get capitation, so maybe the transducer is behind a water pickup or a strake, you know, or you know, some hulls, if it's a step hull, it's placed behind the step. You know, steps built to introduce air, so you slide on the water. All those things, anytime water gets between the face of the transducer and the water here, if there's air there, tiny little air cushion underneath your boat when you're up at speed. On a smaller boat, a traditional mushroom through hull will penetrate that and be in the water, and you'll have a good chance of reading. On a larger boat, bigger than 38, 40 feet, that gap gets bigger. And now we lose that connectivity to the water with the face. So at that point, typically we'd want to go with like a B265, a transducer that's got a bit of a fairing block to it that just lowers it past that cushion of air that the boat's on top of. So those are reasons why you would lose bottom. If it's a transamount transducer, you just got to get it down in the water more. Was that you that was talking to me about the running the motors on point with quads on the back, and all of a sudden I got a sonar image that just looks like, you know, there's so much turbulence in the water, and that's because, yep, you got 300 horsepower motors all trying to keep you on position, and it's just, you know, it's a hot tub back there. You know, I mean, it's so bubbly, you're just going to get a mess of noise. So that's
when you're on split screen, can you control which screen comes up? Because when I'm running and I push cameras, especially in deeper water, it's hard to find that small speck on the right screen, on the full screen. when you program it, when you push pause, it come up on the bottom lock screen.
So the question was on split screen, can you program it to, on when you hit pause, which screen you're going to go back and... And it's a good question to ask, because what I do on my boat is I go back to full screen sonar and pause it and go back and look for it and mark it that way real fast.
Yeah, and by default, and there's not a way to unchange it, it's always going to go to the full screen size instead of the zoomed in side.
Okay, so that's everything, I guess, that I adjust on mine outside of default factory settings under the sonar main menu. And then in sonar setup, the next, I guess, set of stuff, scroll speed. I don't adjust my scroll speed. I think you've talked about that before on boats you've run.
Yeah, you can. Sometimes at a faster scroll speed, you can get a better picture of the bottom. It's not something. It's a much more advanced technique. And if somebody wants to come up and talk about that, we can. But I think for the most part, I think it's going to be kind of over the top.
And I don't adjust mine from.
Default is nice. Auto works too. So auto is going to adjust it to the speed of the boat based on GPS, where default's just going to leave it right there in the middle at 5. So if I was going to play around with anything, I would go between default and auto and see what your differences are there.
Agreed. Now the things that I actually do change on mine and every other boat that I get on is the appearance. Under that menu, color gain, I change color gain. I run mine pretty low, and I don't know what kind of bottom we're looking at on the demo, but how it's red. We talk a lot about looking at the difference in bottom based on sand or coral or rocks or natural bottom or whatever you're looking at. When I found with this down, I can see a difference in actually what the bottom is. And it's very noticeable running across the bay because you can tell it's sand. And when I get in the Gulf, and maybe I'm using it wrong. And
nope, you're doing it just right.
I run my color gain at a -8. Almost all of the time. And for me, the more I look at it, it's just helped me actually see what I'm looking at as far as what the bottom is. So on my notes, I say this is what I use to help define hard versus soft bottom.
Yeah, and that's a great explanation of it, because especially if you can go to an area where you know it's a hard bottom and see the difference between that and a soft bottom by playing with a lower color gain, it's going to give you a lot thinner line, as you can see up there. If it's at default, you got a really thick red line.
And we talk in every seminar about looking at the green fuzz on the bottom that we're looking for on what to fish, and it helps make things stand out a lot.
Would you repeat that?
Default is 0, no gain.
About differentiating what I'm looking at on the bottom.
The green fuzz.
Just like this. Just like this.
The green fuzz that's on the top of the red. So when you have the green fuzz on top of the red, that tells us that it's live bottom. We're reading live coral. And the gentleman's question was, what are we talking about with this green fuzz? Well, this little fuzz that you see right here along the rocks, that's how we differentiate if it's live bottom. If I pull up on a piece of rock bottom and it's not live bottom, the likelihood is it's not going to hold fish nearly like it would if it's actual true live bottom.
Yep. And now my next is probably my favorite thing.
Well, one more thing. So is there anything special you do on a Garmin screen to get that green color, or does it just pop like that?
It just pop. That's natural. If the bottom's live, that's what you're going to get.
This picture here is probably taken out of the factory. No settings changed. In the Gulf, it'll just pop up like that.
Nice.
Ours are set up now a little more detailed.
That's actually a piece of that's right there off the Alaska Plateau, just offshore the Alaska.
So my next thing that I use a lot, and I call it the poor man's live scope. For me, I started using it mainly to help answer the question every day of customers on my boat going, what am I looking at? Like, I'm like, look at them, guys, they're right here. Look at how awesome this looks. And people are like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm like, okay, see this column on the far right side?
Let me go back.
There you go.
Let me go full screen sonar here.
This column on the far right side, see where it says 155 feet at the bottom? That's the actual sonar reading underneath the boat. So sonar obviously comes out in a cone, and that's 155 feet diameter at the bottom of the cone. So that's actually the live reading of what your sonar is showing, and everything else in that is history. So when we were talking about marking spots on your boat, that's why you pause it and go back to what the actual sonar reading was at that time. So for me, I've really grown to stare at that column more so than anything. So I know what depth their fish are to target and where.
You show them how to turn that scope on.
Yep.
And
And the other
there's
thing
more
to
to
bear
it.
in mind, right? So that 155 feet, now that lets you know you've got, let's see, quick math, 155 divided by 2, 7, about 60 feet. No, pardon me, 80 feet, either direction. You know, that could be, you know, so if, you know, so one, we scroll, so that at 0 right there, that little, these targets down here at the bottom, they could be 80 feet to the right, they could be 80 feet to the left. We don't know. They're somewhere within that 155-degree circle that's on the bottom. So this is not, when you're looking at that, that's not a straight line behind the boat and, you know, all those things are just lined up in a line behind you. That's not the way it works. I mean, it helps you, I think, to get your head wrapped around the fact that, oh yeah, there's that third dimension, even though we're looking at it in a 2D representation.
And sometimes that guy on the side of the boat who's like, I want to go fish on that side. It seems like they're biting better on that side. maybe there's some legitimacy to that.
Yep.
And also, that's why when you pull up to your spot, because it's shooting like that, that's why you want to make a little clover leaf around your spot to see, then you'll start getting some overlap, and you're going to be able to tell more realistically what part of that 155-foot circle, and that circle will change as you change that measurement different as we change depths of water.
What do they call those? Like a Venn diagram, right? You know, you keep driving those loops like a 4-leaf clover. You know, you're going to have that center area that intersects, and you're going to be able to tell where that thing shows up. Oh, first we'll tell you how to turn it on.
Yeah,
and then Mark will explain to you.
I actually we have a part in here to show you too, actually, and I don't want to get too long-winded with a lot of these details, but it's stuff that I find interesting, so hopefully you do too. But there's a part in this as we get through of what are we actually looking at, and like, okay, these might be bait fish, these look like snappers, these are amberjack or stuff like that in there. Was that?
So in the A-scope column, so that is. So at 0, see where that line kind of segments from the A-scope column to the sonar picture? So that line, everything to the left of that line is history. It's been through the processor, we've drawn the arch. Everything that we're looking at in the A-scope column is the raw return. So if you're actually parked in a spot, right, and you can drop your bait into that sonar column, you can actually jig your bait and see your bait going up and down. And, you know, and if you see something that, you know, poor man's live scope, like you said.
Yeah.
You know,
If you adjust your range,
how do you mean by adjust your range? No, so, well, I mean, you could adjust the range, but you're going to adjust the range for the whole sonar picture as well.
okay.
So like if we went, so if I, you know, it's set at auto right now, and if I shrink it, you know, that's what's going to happen. So that's making the range show.
You'll lose bottom and everything.
So it still tells us, so, but here's the cool thing. So we're at a 52-foot circle at the
Small
bottom of that range. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
So if we're only fishing the top 160 feet of that column,
That A-scope is going to read the same thing all the time.
Yep, that's
Yep.
a live reading of what the sonar is showing at that time. Yep.
If you're 50 feet,
It's like maybe 6 feet.
that's a trigonometry question. I'm going to use a
depth to 50 feet.
16-foot circle.
How big is that?
16.
All right, what about if you're 100 feet? How do you do it?
It just
So
gets.
I'll show you. See that plus button there? I'm going to press that and take it to 100 feet. And now that number's changed to 32 feet.
32?
Yep. There you go.
So one other thing that I do with my A-scope, obviously, we'll just click back on auto. Obviously, the bottom here is what, 360 feet? And you're seeing a couple returns coming up 300 feet down, somewhere like that, or whatever fish are swimming underneath the boat at the time. One thing that I've adjusted on mine, which is because I mean, there's a lot going on the boat. You're not staring, if you're just captaining the boat maybe, and you're just staring at the screen, yeah, you can see instantly what's happening. But I've adjusted peak hold on mine to hold a little bit longer. So if
So before we go there, turning it on and off. So sonar setup, appearance, A-scope. So my green light is on, then you can press the 3 buttons.
and just to show you guys, without A-scope on, it's just your regular return, which probably a lot of you guys are running. But with A-scope on, you get that actual column of the live return. And then with peak hold, I adjust mine up, and I'll just put it on the max now, 5 seconds. It'll actually hold the returns in there longer. So if you're not looking at it instantly when that fish swims by, you get a couple extra seconds of stuff actually happening underneath the boat.
You can see that blip, that you passed over something.
It is pretty cool. All right, color gain, I run that low. I run A-scope on with peak hold. Picture advance and echo stretch, I really only use rarely. I probably wouldn't get into those much if you just want to.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, picture advance, you can just adjust that to a different ratio. 1-to-1 is factory default, and I wouldn't go to 2-to-1. I don't see the point.
And sometimes if you're like high-speed trolling and you turn on echo stretch for a longer return or something like that, like rarely, but even for me on my boat practically, like yes, that's how it works, but I don't actually do that. I do have my echo stretch turned up at a +2 though.
So yeah, and you can see how those returns have changed. They paint a lot smaller, but a +2 gives a little more pop and substance to the return itself.
It's just worth trying on your boat one day, like we were talking about, just to see if that gives you a better return. And the next thing is noise rejection. Interference, color limits, smoothing, and all that, I don't adjust too much. I do not.
Fish symbols?
No, don't turn on fish symbols. The one thing that I do.
Everyone should use fish symbols.
No, don't listen to that.
Okay, so oh god. So fish symbols. So we're running
You
the
asked for
fish
this.
symbols off. We've got 4 selections of fish symbols. We've got fish symbols with structure, fish symbols with structure and depth, fish symbols by themselves, and fish symbols with depth. So here we go.
And they're pinning every day.
So that's the most annoying. The only thing that's more annoying than fish symbols is all of y'all who have AIS detection.
Yeah.
By the way, how do you turn that off and make it never come back?
Oh god. Are you talking about AIS alarms?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just turn it off, be off forever. Because I swear, some boats I get on, I turn that sucker off 30 times a day.
There we go.
Okay.
There's our fish symbols.
Nope, it's terrible. Don't use that.
So-
Okay, so you asked for it and you agree it's terrible. Okay. The
What kind of fish?
the one
Goldfish?
sorry, we do have a question. Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm sorry for whatever I said. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And the question was that you got roasted for posting a screenshot on Facebook and why. I think I don't. Sorry.
Oh yeah, because he had fish symbols on there, and the question was, what am I looking at?
It covers up what you're looking at. You know,
Yeah.
you can't see. You're looking. The fish symbols don't give you any information as to what the species is. The clutter, to some degree, does. So it limits your ability to tell what's on the screen.
Yeah, like hopefully in the next like half hour you're like, oh, and then you'll start making fun of other people for using it. But it's like the cleaner it is and the more like and maybe it's just because I stare at this a lot. With that stuff on makes it a lot harder for me to see what's going on. Like if I was on your boat, I'd be like, man, what are you doing? Get this off. I can't see what I'm looking at. But you're right.
And all the people who say stuff like that on Facebook, just block them, because everything that you post, I mean, they're never going to be helpful.
You just
So just block
send us
them.
Yeah, just block them.
Yeah, send us a text.
The 2 or 3 people that actually explained it to you, keep them.
One thing that I do a lot, and I don't know, and there's probably a reason for it that I don't know about, but underneath the appearance menu is underneath noise rejection is the surface noise. So almost every boat I get on has surface noise turned on. Yep, right there. Noise rejection and surface noise. Almost every boat I get on has this turned on. And for our applications in the Gulf, the first 15, 20 feet of water is just solid red noise.
And it can be,
I would remove the surface noise and not adjust the gain.
yep. And that surface noise can be a lot. You can be reading jellyfish, you can be reading plankton, you can be reading everything but temperature, bubbles. It can be reading everything except fish.
Surface noise.
And if you try to use gain to get rid of it, you'll lose definition
And then-
of the actual things you want to see.
And I'm sure I probably have a picture of it somewhere on my phone, but typically like it is, and maybe it's just our application here different from freshwater and we're driving faster and there's bigger boats and 1,800 horsepower on the back. It's definitely, I mean, if you have 10 feet of solid red at the top, it's every, I think we had it on your boat. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. No, it's an option for a reason. I don't think you need to be in there. I mean, if it doesn't bother you, leave it on because you're probably not fishing the first 10 feet of water anyways. But if you want a nice, cool blue screen to look at, turn it off.
And a lot of times, at least our application of fishing, we chum a lot of fish up to the boat.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, it'll still read good contours and good returns at the top of the water column, just without all that extra
Noise.
without all that extra stuff. And like your question was, will gain get rid of the surface noise as well? Yes, it will, but I think that's probably masking a bigger problem. Like there's scroll settings and some other things you can do to get a better picture temporarily and then change it back as you start fishing, but there's a lot of settings in there to help with that. And then bottom search limit, shift, TVG, a lot of stuff that we don't use but that I just think are sweet features.
Yeah. So
TVG is
TVG,
pretty cool.
time variable gain, basically, it's going to, let's see here, sonar setup. Here it is. Where did that go? There. And explain how you use it. I mean, you've got the 4 options, low, medium, high.
So before you explain how to use it, show them how you go back to the beginning
sure.
and go there slowly.
Close. Options, sonar setup, noise reject, time variable gain, TVG is at the bottom there.
And I have mine set on medium, which I think is overkill. I don't need to do that. I think they come default to off, but, and again, my interpretation of it, it adjusts the amount of gain based on the depth.
Yep.
So like you can have it set, so like at this amount, at the first third, it's set to low, and then it's medium, and then it's higher, or however.
Yeah.
Which is cool if you think about the theory, but realistically, a lot of us, I think, are catching bait right off the lip with a certain setup and then fishing in 100 feet. And then some of you guys with big boats are going way out there, and maybe it's a lot more useful, but it's just kind of bonus features that to think about or play with one day. The next thing I have on mine are actual examples of returns. You want to talk about those?
Well, we make sure anybody has no questions that we've gone over first so far, so they don't forget.
All right, what about sonar setup questions and how I use mine? Perfect. Good. I did a good job.
So what you can do,
The question was, if you only have 50 or 200 hertz frequent transducer, where would you run it and at what depth?
yeah, so 50 is going to be your deeper water. I'd take 200 kilohertz up to 150, 250 feet. You know, anything other than that, I'd run the 50. But then you can also in addition to split zoom, we also have a split frequency screen, so you can actually watch both frequencies simultaneously. And you know, on this one, it's going to say transmission disabled. You know, play.
You basically just leave your coordinates on in the corner, and when you get to your spot, send me a screenshot of it, and I'll let you know which one.
So before we get off of this type of stuff, the importance of turning off your transducer when your boat comes out of the water.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
So
This is huge. Save you a ton of money.
So I trailer my boat. I keep it at my house. Obviously, you can tell I'm a nerd. Like, I like nerdy parts of this, and I think it helps me catch much better fish because I know what I'm looking at and how to use this stuff differently than some people. I keep my boat in the yard. I update my radios and my charts, and that's a whole nother conversation to have on how to update these things in Active Captain and charts and pushing data back and forth. But one thing that I do, no matter what, anytime I'm on my boat when it's out of the water, is make sure my transducer's turned off. Now, I believe, much like your big engine, it uses water for cooling.
Yep.
And the first thing that burns out, and ask me how I know this, is the temperature sensor.
Yep.
And when you lose your temperature sensor,
Typically, you start getting faults and lose the transducer.
and I lost my transducer. So the very first thing I do when my boat's out of the water is turn off my transducer, and there's 2 ways to do it, and one's really easy that I didn't know about until recently.
So the really easy way that I like is just a quick press of the power button, and then disable all sonar transmission, and it's off.
So like even when I bring my boat here for service, I'll turn that off before I bring it over, just in case. I mean, these guys are experts; they know what they're doing. But if my sonar is not on, nothing can happen.
So, and that's nice because it turns off all the sonar. The other way to do it, let me just do a quick press here, enable all sonar transmissions, close. Another way to do it is go to options and then transmit on and off, but that's only on one transducer, right? So now you got to go to a Clearview side view or a GT51. It's the quick and easy way to make sure you're turning off all sonar transmission is quick tap of the power button. That's also where you're going to get your night modes and your night mode colors and all that fun stuff, as well as with that quick power button. So just night color setup. We can go full colors, green colors, red colors, go to night colors.
Oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
I just turned my brightness down real far and put like a towel over my
So-
screen when I'm driving home. All right, well, I'm done.
So one of the cool things is, it will shift to night mode full colors. So we've got.
Caleb knew that.
So go back.
That's awesome.
So that was, again, close. Quick press of the power button. Color mode.
Does anyone have a pen? I can write this down.
Set up night colors. So your night colors, you got full colors, which is going to look like this. As full colors, it's got a dark shade to it. Red colors we just saw, and then there's green colors as well.
Oh.
So, and of course,
Like Alien versus Predator.
Get ready for
Man,
cool social
nice.
media posts coming through from that.
Yep.
That's going to be awesome.
So yeah, because automatically, it's a GPS. It knows where you are. It knows when the sun sets. It's going to switch. You can have it switch to night colors automatically, and that's by default out of the box is what's going to happen. Then there is a light sensor on there as well, so the darker it gets, the dimmer this will get also. But Mark, has to throw a towel over it too, because it's just a little too bright.
That's awesome.
So yeah, let's get to.
Oh,
we're
we're not
actually
going to
looking
talk about watching football in the Garmin.
No, so I've got the next thing, because I don't know if people have stuff to go do or whatever, but I think I would care more about seeing species identification. And then I do have stuff on here for navigation, active captain stuff, engine data. So one of you guys asked a question about engine data on the screen, depending on what engines you have and how it's set up. But I don't want to get too long-winded because you guys probably have stuff to do. Maybe trolling motors towards the end. We can
Trolling motors,
talk
yeah.
about radio stuff, VHF stuff, fusion audio stuff. How I've got my chart plotter set up with my radio, so if I'm going fast, it automatically turns my radio up to match, and if I slow down, it'll lower it.
Speed to volume ratio. Just most modern vehicles have that built in. You don't even notice because you're just driving 60 miles an hour, and it still sounds great.
And then zones on my radio. We're taller guys. My speakers are 3 inches from my head, so I turn mine down so that the frat guys up front can have a party while I'm driving home. But a lot of stuff like that, if you guys have questions, we can talk about afterwards. But I think, for me anyway, and maybe you guys, feel free to tell me what you want to know. But Tim, do you want to go through some of the species stuff? And one question did come through on my social media too that said, how do you know what you're looking at for bottom? Like, how do you know it's sand? How do you know it's natural bottom, or what's a wreck look like? Things like that. So I think you've got a bunch of screenshots of this stuff too.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and I don't know if I have them in order for that. But what does bottom look like versus a wreck?
Can I try and do a hot swap of the HDMI?
Sure.
I think are both of these live? Both screens? Okay.
Oh, let's see. Where's your HDMI in the back here? Let's see. You're white.
Yeah, so like all the settings and all that stuff,
To go through.
really,
Okay.
the more you
Oh, it
play
has
with
to
it,
go
like
through there.
looking at it, I'm like, guys, look at this. Can't you see the snapper? Like, look at the size of that thing.
No, I'm sorry.
But if you don't know what you're looking at, it doesn't really matter. So Tim's kind of the expert on a lot of this. What I like a lot, especially I've been lucky enough to fish with Tim for a while. If I'm driving, it's hard sometimes to drive the boat and keep an eye on the chart and keep an eye
You're
on the
hoping to
bottom
get the HDMI TV
and
all
see everything that's
plugged
happening.
up
But Tim's
to
good
that.
at staring at that. So like if you're riding out there with your wife and you're driving along, keeping everybody safe, and then she's like, hey, what was that on the bottom? And then you pause it and scroll back and mark it. It helps a lot to have I don't want to call it a spotter, but just have more people that know what they're doing, which helps. Or like you said, so I don't know if you guys saw, I did have Hulu streaming on my chart plotter the other day when I was out fishing. Were you? So there are video inputs on certain chart plotters.
Yes.
And Kayla said she got a message about that. I did run. At first, I had a Fire Stick plugged into the back of my 8612.
Yep.
But I've graduated to running a HDMI to Lightning adapter to stream off of my phone.
Nice.
Which gets around some things. But I do have a combo, actually a smart mode called Saturdays, which has football, chart, and sonar on it. Well, I should say football. I should say video.
Video.
HDMI Helm 1.
Helm 1. Got it.
Relief shading and that. So is that coming up?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Oh, perfect. Do you want
And
this?
then are you able to also pair your phone to your Fusion so the audio comes out through the sound
The
system?
first thing I did was I tried Fire Stick and HDMI, and then I powered the Fire Stick off of the USB from the Fusion.
Yep.
Which worked. But I found I like it better, especially offshore running off of a hotspot, to go HDMI into iPhone and Bluetooth connection to Fusion to play over the.
Got it.
That way, which is pretty sweet, guys. Even if you're just at Crab Island, but then, oh yeah, shit.
Okay, so your question was,
Those are toes. I can identify that.
I think those are Fisher's toes. It's either Fisher or Cruz. But this is a chicken coop. It's in some pretty shallow water.
And how do you know it's chicken coop?
Well, I call it a chicken coop, but this is actually one of the Okaloosa pyramids. I just call all the pyramids chicken coops. But you can see that you can see the chicken coop and the fish above it, and then the bottom structure. I think you asked how can you tell hard bottom from soft bottom, and I don't know if I have a picture of something that's not hard bottom, but the more return you have in the red colors on the bottom, the more you're going to see. We have a battery problem.
So look at that one. So see how the bottom there is just the green fuzz we were talking about, as opposed to that big red hard concrete pyramid. I think that's what they were asking.
Yeah, and this is a very you have a good show of bottom here. You got good fuzz and live bottom, and this is a very interesting picture because these were jacks, and we actually caught a big jack out of this. I have to go back to this area and really look around. I don't see any reason for those jacks to be where they're at.
I agree.
They should not be there, but somewhere within, it may be a few hundred yards to a quarter mile to a half a mile away, there's a wreck, there's a rock, there's a ledge, there's something, but I don't know what's close by. We ran these were some that we just ran over, and we caught a big one out of this. He was, I don't know, close to 90 pounds.
What did you think it was?
Well, just looking at the returns, I thought they were jacks, but I didn't know the reason why they were there.
How do you know that?
Longer, the returns are longer. They can be more dense. They can be much more red, or they can be much longer. The longer the return or the darker the return can give you indications to size of fish. And sometimes you never really know till you drop down there and catch one.
Right.
I mean,
And-
those could have just as easily been tunas or, whatever. But you may not know, you may not conclusively know until you drop and catch one.
And to your question, why couldn't it be kings? I feel like kings are pelagic creatures. They swim around a lot more. They're not. I typically don't think I capture them on my returns, and I wouldn't expect kings to be hanging out at 320 feet down. And now I don't know. I mean, we've caught tuna off the bottom. We've caught groupers off the surface. It's just typically amberjack are between, 100 feet off the bottom? Somewhere like that?
Generally speaking, yes. They're mid-water column fish.
So like your groupers are on the bottom, your snappers are closer to the bottom, your amberjacks are way up. Yeah, I've got a really good picture of amberjack returns on my phone too.
So let's do this we're going to run through this kind of quick because my iPad's going to die here in a second. I thought it was fully charged today. But this one is, this is a little wreck here where this picture was actually taken during one of the moon phases. And the fish that are right above the wreck that we were catching, those are jacks. But the snapper, because of the moon, they were well off. The snappers were well off the wreck, probably up to as much as 300 or 400 feet from the wreck. And that's very typical on a moon. The snappers will move, and the reason they move off the wreck, they need to move away from where all the little bait fish are to lay their eggs. Otherwise, the little ruby lips and the baby mingos and everything, they just eat up all the eggs, and that's why the snappers are going to. And groupers will move off during their spawn. You know, amberjacks would move off on their spawn. There again, this is a very mixed picture over some bottom. You know, your snappers are generally going to be a little further down if they're mixed with jacks.
If you put a live bait in at that spot and don't get bit, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And one of the big keys, you know, you can see there that most of those, the depth there is like 225, and most of the snappers are down there at like 150. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 15 Mississippis, you're about the depth you want to run. If you run your bait all the way to the bottom, there's going to be little snappers that aren't on TV. If you drop it all the way to the bottom and reel up, you're going to bring all the little snappers up into the water column with the bigger snappers and the jacks. If you work your way from the top to the bottom, it may take you a little longer to get a bite, but the bite you get will be a much more quality bite. There again on this one, we can see a school of bait off to the side here. We got our snappers kind of hanging up over the wreck. And groupers are the hardest thing to actually see groupers on TV. We see the grouper bottom, that we have this really good bottom, and we have lots of bait and everything attached to the bottom. The likelihood is that there's going to be some groupers there, but they're the hardest thing to actually see because, as a general rule, they're not going to come more than 15 or 20 feet off the bottom. Once you catch one or two, you may get them up into the water column, but they want to be close to the bottom. They're not, snappers will come much higher in the water column. This one's just kind of a mix of snappers and triggers, mingos mixed in, but they're again all natural bottom. More of the pictures that I'm going to have are going to be natural bottom spots and not I don't rely on wrecks to be able to catch fish. If you rely on wrecks, then everybody's going to be there fishing with you all the time. This one is just a good mix of mingos and triggers. You can see a lot of the streaks that are going from top to bottom. Those are actually picking up your lines going up and down.
Look at the difference in the zoom too, based on the screen on the right and the zoomed image on the left.
When you look over here on the far right, if you don't have split screen on, you're seeing some fish activity, but it's nothing like it is over here. You know, this one here.
I took that picture.
You took that picture?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This one has a lot of bait and a good amount of snappers. But that little cluster over there is a mixture of mingos and baits. I bet you caught 1 million firemouth snappers there.
Every bait that went in the water there was a keeper red snapper.
Nice.
It was awesome. But again, I was fishing about 25 feet down.
Oh, is that your guy that you asked?
Oh, so I did have a trip once where I had 4 guys on my boat, and it's 2 snapper per person. One guy caught 7 of the 8 snapper. And I was like, hey man, what are you doing that nobody else is? And he was like, I'm dropping to the bottom and I'm reeling up 25 times. And I was like, okay, tell me that again. We were in like 75 feet of water. And he was like, yeah, I dropped down to the bottom, I reeled up 25 times. I was like, can you show me that? And he dropped over the side and he rode all the way up, and I looked over and his bait was right underneath the boat. And I was like, what is going on? And I look over and there's just red snapper everywhere. So I was like, guys, just put your baits in the water. And they were like, drop down and reel up 25 times. I was like, no, just put it in the water. Go through that whole reel up process.
At that point, I think I'd just take the lead.
Snapper, I was like, all right, let's go for amberjack or something.
This one we had. This one here, this is one that I would probably pass on this spot. I think this was actually one of the ships or something that's out there. There are a few snapper that you can see right here in the middle of the screen. There's some larger returns, but there is so much bait in that picture. I think it's going to be hard to get a bite, and the bites that you do get are you're just going to get eat up by baby triggerfish and ruby lips. I probably would not fish that one, even though it looks like a lot on the screen, mostly just garbage on the screen.
And sometimes, we did it the other day, we dropped down a sabiki rig on a return that looked just like this. And it was 6 red snapper this big at a time. I mean, it was just covered in tiny fish.
Yeah. So that's one that I would, even though it looks kind of good on TV, I would go and fish something. There's one that doesn't. Has quite a bit on it. I would fish that little bit of what I see on TV there rather than the one before it where there were so many. That looks. Mm-hmm. Yep. You got a couple snappers up in the water. Yeah, that's snappers up off the bottom, but there's enough bait and rock structure on the bottom, we were catching groupers there. I think that bite, if I remember right, that bite was more red groupers than anything, and it was very odd to me that day because normally I don't catch red grouper that deep. Normally for me it's somewhere around 225 is where I start moving out of red groupers. Some of y'all may have spots that have them much deeper. That one we did. This is another one where it was taken during spawning season. On the very, very left of the screen, you can see where the coop was, and these fish were well off the coop. And you can find this situation. It doesn't have to be on a moon. If we have a tremendous amount day when the current's running really bad, the current can push the fish off the wreck 300 to 500 feet. So it's not just moon that will push them over there.
And they use that big moon, they use that big tide to help spawn, help get all that stuff away from everything to eat it. So there are times, and luckily now with trolling motors, when we spot lock over a spot, it's kind of easy to get where you want to be, right over the pyramid or whatever you're fishing, and then hit the anchor, drift down current, or even like when we go to pull up spots and move to the next spot, just drift down current directly in the right direction, and you'd be surprised how far off you can find them. Correct.
If they lay their eggs right on top of the structure, 90% of them won't make it through the day. This is another good one here that has a lot of things going on the screen. We've got a good mix of black and red snappers up in the water. We got bait. I'm sure there's triggers and mingos mixed into this, especially over here on the far left. But just a really good piece. That's all bottom there. Everything on the bottom, all that fuzz that you see on the bottom down there, that is all bait. But
if I came across that, I would not drop my bait to the bottom.
No. You see those marks up there where I say black snapper at 20 feet? Well, a lot of those black snappers are going to be red snappers. If you drop to the bottom, you'll catch 16, 18-inch snappers, and if you fish up in the column there, you're going to catch quality fish.
And Tim,
It's what we caught. You know, to look on screen and look at a mark and go, those are black snappers versus red snappers, that's hard.
Certain times of the year, you can kind of make an educated guess of like the amberjack example. Amberjacks are way up in the water column. Those, if I see that, I'd probably start throwing some cut bait into the water and see and look. And honestly, I mean, we're lucky here that our water's so clear. At 20 feet down, you can see them. So I mean, typically you get some bait in the water or chum block or something like that, and you look over the side and get way too excited and then end up apologizing for the curse words you said in front of somebody's kids. But it's pretty, I took that picture and that was my favorite spot of the entire year. I didn't catch a whole lot of fish, but every fish I caught off of that was, I think the smallest snapper, red or black, was 28 inches.
And this is one where you were talking earlier about slowing the speed down on your sonar to get longer return.
Yeah, I think if you try that color gain at a lower number and then your echo stretch up a little bit, I think it
yeah,
helps.
run the echo stretch up.
I think it helps.
Yeah. All right.
Joe, I think that's what you're fishing all the time, right? Is that what your sonar always looks like? We got a lot of pictures of small fish from you.
All right. Questions? And I'll do a post on Facebook with all the pictures from this. I've done it a couple times, but I'll put all these. I'll make another post out of these so you can go
Put
back.
that black snapper one in there.
Doesn't
Make
have
sure
any
all those
numbers.
coordinates are off of those, by the way. That's the first thing. That's a good point too. Yeah, turn off the coordinates when you're taking pictures and sending these or posting them on Facebook with your fish symbols on it. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
And if you're going to text pictures, make sure you turn it off.
Don't tell anyone that.
And
People don't know
another
that
thing,
one.
instead of taking pictures with your phone, if you want a quality image of what you're looking at, with an SD card in the slot, you can press and hold the home button there. And it will actually take use this time. It'll take a screenshot, put it onto the SD card, it saves as a .png image, and then you've got something that doesn't have a reflection or a flash or water stains or toes or whatever.
And you can also do that off of Active Captain, the app.
You can do it off of Active Captain on the app, and you can also, on the app, you can record video as well. Again,
So do
type
that
the
again
numbers.
for them real slow.
Press and
It's not up
hold.
on the big screen.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So press and hold the home, you know, whether you haven't updated your software or you got older machines, but
Look, Brian, my iPad's got 1% of battery, so it's going to die in a second.
okay.
So I can put you back up there.
Okay, dope. Let's see, this is.
Do most of you guys have Garmin units? Not yet? Are you going to? I took my old units off to put these on, and for me, maybe it's just because I've spent so much time on them, but it's very intuitive to me.
There we go. So when I press and hold the home key there, I'm actually going to get a message that says memory caught /2 on the 1243 XSV, which is that unit over there, because that's the card, that's the unit network that has a card in it. So I'll just say use this time. And now I've saved that image file saved. You can see up in the upper right-hand corner there. There it is. So now I've got these nice screenshots of what we're looking at here on that card. But as Mark was saying, you can do it from Active Captain. You can also record video from Active Captain, whether you're on Android or iPhone.
And I try to do decent, I don't want to say tutorials, but little things like that on our Facebook and Instagram, especially when we're out there and Tim and I are catching black snappers and we're like, hey, this is what it looks like and here's the screen. So we try to do some of that stuff too, if you guys look at that. The only other things I have, the big points on here, I mean, there's navigation, there's radar stuff, there's VHF and stereo and engine data and maintenance stuff and
Yeah.
no, but the only other thing, what about most of you guys run trolling motors, right? Sorry, we do have a question.
Yeah. So I'm having trouble with mine. I've got 76 foot. The tracking speed. It doesn't track. It's not keeping up track.
Now,
Are you good? Did I miss that?
now what do you mean by tracking?
The heading,
Yeah, it's you know.
Yeah.
It's not keeping up.
Okay, so yeah, that's a heading sensor. Do you have an autopilot on your boat? All right. So anybody who has an autopilot on their boat is not going to have this problem because they've got a heading sensor built in to their autopilot. You can address that. There's a couple of ways. The first way is and I keep wanting to say striker cast, but it's steady cast. So SteadyCast is a little N2K heading sensor. It requires a lot of calibration, a lot maintenance, we'll call it, right?
and it's basically, I don't want to cut you off, this is your wheelhouse. Yeah. It's basically because there's a single GPS receiver in your head unit, and unless it's moving, it doesn't know which direction it's pointing, correct?
Correct. So if you're barely moving, your boat's going to be shifty on the water. Or say you're stopped and you were pointed north and a current starts taking you east, all of a sudden your boat's actually going to shift and point east because you've changed direction, right? Even though you're just drifting sideways east, your bow is still pointed north, is going to think that you're headed east because it's GPS.
The issue I'm talking about specifically is like we've gone.
Yep. Slowly. Yeah, and it's the boat icon is shifty. Is that what I'm hearing, or is your track log?
The tracking is just not keeping up with what we're running. It's so where we are in terms of.
Are you talking about the track log, like leaving a track breadcrumb trail behind you? Nope. Okay. Okay.
So if I'm driving at you and I think I'm going at you, but you're going this way, and then you correct, and it starts coming back after you're pointing this way, and then starts coming back. It's a heading. It's a
hardware issue. You don't have a heading sensor. You need a heading sensor. The best middle of the road piece of equipment would be our 24XD GPS antenna puck. You mount it on the hardtop, or if you don't, wherever on your boat that you could mount a remote GPS antenna. That one, the 24XD has a built-in heading sensor, so that should alleviate.
Better than the SteadyCast?
Yes. Yeah.
And how much does that piece typically retail for?
$250, $300.
So not that much more than a heading sensor.
No. So the SteadyCast, I think I paid $125 for, but the 24XD's just a little bit more.
Yeah, GPS antenna.
Does it only work for Garmin?
It's an NMEA 2000 product. So if you've got NMEA 2000 compliant devices, not certified, compliant, there's a difference.
First of all, you got to make to where your north is always up. Turn north always up on your Garmin. Put your compass rows around your boat. And then all you got to do is when you figure out which way you're going, and then if your
You pilot that boat.
Your spot is over here. You just turn you see your compass rows, and then you use your compass on your boat to go that way, and then your boat will buzz.
we get by, we do, we're doing what we need to do, it's just frustrating, yeah.
It'd be nice if the screen helped Joe out a little bit more.
If you could use two GPS signals from two different charts together.
Yes, sir.
No.
Yeah.
I just installed a GPS on my boat, and I was curious, is the GPS reading any more accurate using the GPS from the heading sensor or the internal GPS from
Which puck did you put on? Okay.
So the question the gentleman asked was, is the puck or the internal GPS more accurate?
So
I'm asking that because the internal GPS obviously is covered up by the console, and I don't know how that impacts the reading.
yeah, so on Garmin product, I can't really speak to the Lowrance puck because I don't know its specs, but on the Garmin product, they're both internal and external puck are both reading at the same speed, 10 hertz, so 10 times a second it's sending a signal. Our puck has a little bit more robust GPS technology in it, so the accuracy is a lot greater. And then our 24XD, our most current puck that we've got, also has the heading sensor built in, so that helps a lot stabilize the boat at slower speeds and gives you a truer image. You know, if you don't have an autopilot on board with a heading sensor as well. So accuracy as far as, say if you've got two screens buried in your helm. You know, ours can read through most center consoles and there's enough satellites in the constellations that we access that we can get pretty good readings from either one. Where it becomes a problem is if you're letting the system decide which GPS to listen to. So you can, on the Garmin units, you can set a preferred source for GPS and pick one, the other, or your puck on top. You know, where it becomes a problem with autopilots is if one signal, it's using one and it gets a little weaker and the system sees that this one's stronger, when they pass over to the stronger signal, in that handshake, the autopilot will lose position and the autopilot will shut down. So
Really?
in setup,
So do that one more. I have 2 boats that do that right now.
okay, so it's settings and then
And I have a question too.
system, satellite positioning, that goes there, source, and then you'll have all of the different GPS. This is all simulated data. You'll
Right.
have all of the GPS sources that are available. Just pick one. And then you'll want to do the same through the autopilot page on the chart plotter as well. Pick the source.
And
On that screen right there.
Yep.
Yep, based on which one you're selecting. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because they don't know what country these are going to out of the factory, some of this is turned off, right?
Right. So I would go ahead and typically the WAS EGNOS is off. Go ahead and turn that on because what WAS is, that was developed for aviation, it gives pilots a more refined and more precise GPS position for approaching runways. So what happens is all the satellites in the constellation in the low atmosphere rain their signals down. We've got 2 big antennas on each coast up near our northern border with Canada that pick these up, all of the GPS signals. They in turn process them, send the time-corrected signals back up to a second satellite, which rains down, and that's your WAS signal. So in the US, you turn that on, you'll get a little more refined data if you're not already on there. And to get back to that, so that's under home, settings, system, satellite positioning,
WAS.
and then WAS and EGNOS. EGNOS is the European version of it.
That saved, I had a couple issues with my CL7,
Oh, okay.
losing communication, and changing that fixed my network.
Nice.
And you switched it to on, and that's what fixed yours?
Yes. And I think it's because They don't know
Yeah.
where it's going from the factory, right?
Right.
Makes sense.
So, did you get the answer you're looking for? Okay.
And the only other big technology thing on the boat, I mean, there's radars and autopilots, but not everybody has all that, and that's getting in there. But if you don't run Fish Point or Helmmaster, you guys have trolling motors? Which, okay, that, I mean, from an electronic standpoint, with sonar set up the right way and a trolling motor, it's pretty,
Yeah.
it helps a lot.
Throwing anchors days are done. Nobody wants to do it. It's it's not good for the bottom. With the longer shaft trolling motors, we just came out with our saltwater version. We're in a point where we're actually shipping them now. So we've got a 63, a 75, and a 90 inch. Ours are a little pricier than the competition, but it's a brushless DC motor. You only have to worry about buying one product. If you buy, if you're running 24 volts and you win the lottery and can buy that 36 volt lithium ion battery, you don't have to change your trolling motor. We've got, we know what voltage is being fed to it. So ours will run 24 or 36 volts. One of the cool things about ours, when you do an anchor lock on there, the prop is bi-directional. So with any other trolling motor, if you go a little past your spot, you got to spin 180 degrees and drive backwards. Ours is just flipping back and forth, just holding you right on your spot. It's amazing. It's controllable wirelessly through the Garmin chart plotter. You also get a handheld remote. Part of the remote is like a Wii activated thing, so you can press and hold a button and point over there, press the jog button, and you go over there. Pretty nice stuff. So if
you can follow contour lines and troll with it.
No,
So,
we don't.
You know what they do though is I'm pretty sure it has the same mount as the Minn Kota quick release. So
It's real close, yeah.
So,
But we don't take a trade-in.
so one thing that we didn't cover very well, there's the old Garmin relief shading and the new Navionics Plus.
Yes.
Why do we need to have Navionics Plus now?
So
the crowd goes because it's awesome.
So it's Garmin Navionics Plus. So when we initially released our relief shading, we did quarterly updates. It was not as good and as refined. As we got more and more into it, home and charts. This is, so one, for $250, you've got access to the entire Gulf of Mexico and the east coast of Florida. Relief shading, and the Bahamas, yes, and the Bahamas. Relief shading. You download it to your phone, the sections that you want, you offload it off your phone, or you keep it on your phone. You also make a copy of it to your chart plotter wirelessly. At that point, I've just got a couple of spots here that somebody pointed out to me that, they were just sitting in the lazy boy, just kind of cruising around. And, they found that spot there. That's,
I can zoom away from that.
Yeah, there's no latitude, longitude on there. So anyhow, you get the idea. There can be a lot of stuff out there. And if you're, some of my customers over.
That's where active captain's good.
Yep.
So don't worry about that.
And, areas like this, where there's a bunch of structure that's obviously man-made, you can find some natural bottom around there. You get out there, all those things are loaded up. You can go fish some of this natural bottom that Tim's a fan of. There's a lot of stuff out there that is holding fish, and you can look over that on your sonar, look at those images and see what you've got on the bottom. So really for $250, the amount of data that you get.
One thing I've seen a lot lately in the Destin fishing forums and people asking questions on it, that fee is for the download and a year's worth of updates.
Yep.
So after that year ends and your updates stop,
Yep.
you don't lose all your downloads.
Correct. You keep. Yep. You just can't. So basically, when you get to your year anniversary, a week or two before, you'll start getting. Hey, it's time to renew. It's time to renew. What's going to happen is if you choose not to renew, you don't just lose it. You get to keep the images that you've downloaded, your most recent downloads. And then, if you decide, hey, I heard Garmin's updated it, I saw some stuff, I really want to get it, you can re-up that subscription. It's not like you have to buy it again.
And I believe it's less cost than it.
Yep.
125 for the update.
Yep, 125 to renew.
Yep.
Yes.
I just went through this. What if it says, okay, I renewed it. It was $129.99. I think it did it, but in the process it said there's not enough memory on your Garmin card. I didn't reformat it because it said don't reformat it or you lose everything on your card. It said if there's something on your card, skip that part. So I did it. I brought via Wi-Fi. I downloaded it from my phone to the Garmin. I haven't rechecked. It was like late at night when I did it.
Okay.
So should I go how do I know if it reformatted it or should I totally unformat it and start over? Because I renewed it. I didn't buy it new.
Well, do you want to talk about it afterwards?
Yeah, that might get a little long.
It's the original card that came with Navionics Plus.
Okay.
It should renew.
Yeah, it should, because it's just a subscription. All you're doing is renewing the subscription there.
But you have to put that new data on that card.
And it's saying you ran out of
It's saying
room.
you don't have enough room on the card.
Yeah. Come see you once we've wrapped up.
Okay, thanks.
I beg your pardon? He's asking.
You just keep putting an extra card in?
Yeah, so we do have a maximum card size of 32 gigabytes that our card readers will read. So you can go up to 32 gigs, and then, like you're doing, put a card in another slot, put another 32 gig in there.
And
Sure.
I've found, from my experience, and maybe it's just the way, there's a couple ways to do it, I think, but for me, the easiest way, or the most intuitive way for how my weird brain works, is to update or to download it to Active Captain on my phone.
Yep.
And then push it from my phone to the chart plotter. That's
Yeah.
been the easiest, the most intuitive pathway for me.
And another way to save yourself, from pulling your hair out, is don't download the entire Gulf of Mexico to your phone, and then go to your chart plotter and try to download it. Because what'll happen, and this might be what you've got, you might be in a situation where you're trying to download, more than the card can hold. But we'll talk. But so what a lot of people will do is, oh, look, I got access to all this stuff. I'm going to download it all. They download it all to their phone, go to their boat, and it gets to 99% and then says transfer failed. After like 3 hours of trying to transfer all these images over Wi-Fi. To Mark's recommendation, I would add the caveat: download one tile at a time. So pick your tile, download it to your phone, then offload it immediately to your chart plotter. Once that's done, go download the next tile to your phone, and then offload it to the chart. I mean, the tiles, there's enough in 2 tiles to keep you fishing, for a couple of months.
And no matter what, too, whenever I do anything like this, and you and I were talking beforehand about some weird stuff that I tried that I didn't know I could do but got away with. Before you do anything, take a good backup. Just export, and I'm sure you guys know how to save settings and profiles and export your waypoints and all that stuff. Just do that. Do that first, because you and I were talking I called you and I was like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work. If we lose connections because I threw my phone into the wall, but just hang on. And it worked. But Tim, you even brought it up. You were like, well, worst case, you took a backup, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I can just reload that on.
Yeah.
But I was like, I think this will work.
And also remember, like Brian said too, the newer Garmins use a 32 gig card, but a lot of the older Garmins won't read more than a 16.
Yeah. So it's Yeah, the 8600 series, which is I'm sure where most of y'all are at, 7600 will, if you go back in time to 5200, 7200, not the 76, it might struggle with a 32 gig card. But at that point, you can't run the Garmin Navionics Vision Plus on that anyways. So.
And one thing that if you're having trouble with your stuff, make sure you have a backup. But one thing that I thought was on
My outline?
your outline that you didn't go over at the very, very beginning, make sure your software is up to date.
Oh, yeah, especially on a new boat, because there was a pretty significant GUI change.
Yep. Yeah, to what we're looking at now. And we push them out quarterly. So we're in Q4 today, so we haven't updated it yet. For those folks running Active Captain, you'll probably be getting a notification in the next couple of days that, hey, you got a software update coming. For those of you not running Active Captain, the easiest way I've found to do a manual download from the internet is just literally type into the Google search box, Garmin Marine Software Update. It'll take you to that page and then just scroll all the way down to the bottom and say manual update. Click that and that'll open up the manual page. Then you can check the date. The last date was July 25th. So I checked it this morning. It's still July 25th. So, because I don't have Active Captain hooked up to everything I still do a lot of manual updates. I like to be shown. Yes?
If you update your Garmin software, is it possible that you would possibly have to update your Yamaha software as well to avoid some kind of conflict between the two?
Hopefully not. We work pretty closely together, and we try not to step on Yamaha's toes when we introduce a software update. Yamaha software updates come a lot slower than Garmin software updates, so more than likely not. More than likely not.
If you update Garmin, is there a way to return back to the problem?
There is not a way to go back.
I've heard of some pretty much nightmare stories about losing all the time and everything.
Okay, yeah, and
Is it the Hellmaster or the Garmin? Because it's two different. Right, and it has its own autopilot versus the Garmin. Yeah.
Is that people have updated the Garmin software and not change their Yamaha software?
And Yamaha,
There's a conflict between the new
yeah,
with the existing Yamaha, and it's caused problems.
There are sometimes conflicts where our engineers and their engineers aren't working together 100%, or they have worked together 100%, and you just got to go get the Yamaha update. It can go either way. I do know that there was a time where there was a little disconnect, and we got it fixed pretty quickly, but we didn't see it happen. But if something does happen, we don't have a path to go back. But believe me, there's a lot of coffee and eating takeout to get that fixed immediately.
all right, well, we've got some giveaways to give, right?
We always have it. Well, actually, Brian brought us so many people.
Yeah. I guess if you guys have any questions while we're doing some giveaways too, we can multitask, right?
I'm gonna step back here and
Yeah. There, do you want one of these, Kendall?
test.
What are we giving away?
Both of them? Oh, both of them.
What are we? You want both? What are we giving away?
So I'm not going to be.
Make sure this is on.
Just a reminder, afterwards, if you guys do want to talk to Tim, if you got here late, Tim Broom from Mathage, Mark Coates from 38 Light Tackle, and then we do have Brian from Garmin. The only other thing I'll say before we start these giveaways is that if you guys are not registered for the rodeo, because I don't think we necessarily we didn't really talk about the rodeo, but that is going on the whole month of October, guys. So you do have to get registered. You can register one day, go and get all of your information from the rodeo office right outside of the harbor. And I want to see each and every one of you guys send in pictures with all of this cool swag I'm about to give away with your big fish. I want to see that, okay? All right, are you ready? So number one, since you put it out right here.
Yeah, some pelagic bluffs from people pelagic, right?
We do. We have a couple of the pelagic.
So you don't get. And so some of you can hide your faces while you're taking pictures.
All right. So the first winner here is going to be Larry Meyer. Larry Meyer.
Larry said, "I'm done listening to this.
Okay.
You have to talk for too long." Yeah, of course, man. Get up here.
One.
Black, green, or blue? Perfect.
All right, number two, guys. This is actually going to be a combo set here from Calypso Marine Deck. If you guys aren't familiar with them, they're doing some beautiful stuff here. If you guys want some custom decking for your boat, they can come out, they'll measure it. You know, if you guys want certain graphics and whatnot, they can take care of you. They are local, so you can give them a call. Calypso Marine Deck, and this is going to go to Robert Murphy. All right, Robert, congratulations. There you go.
Well,
you are welcome.
I should have jumped up and I'm Robert.
Uh-oh. No, I'm
We would have
get
talked.
your stuff on
I
here.
like it.
All right, so next up, I've got a couple of shirts from Legendary also. We're all feeling festive here, Halloween. This is going to go to Cam Everton.
Look at this gentleman.
Thank you, honey. There you go. Thank you so much.
Need a buff?
All right, so next up, Mark, if you want to go ahead and let's do another pelagic giveaway here. This is going to go to
I'm not reading that out loud.
I'm not.
All right, just give it a couple of this one. We're gonna leave that there. I'm looking around trying to figure out which one of you I need to talk to. Oh,
So instead, let's
I'm
go
glad you handed that off.
Aaron Henricks. It wasn't yours, sweetie, I promise.
Right on, man. Yeah.
All right, up next, let's do another legendary shirt with these new hats that Todd just showed me. I don't know if you guys have pursuits, but this is a great hat. So this is going to go to Felix Simbagna. I may be saying it wrong. I know, I don't know. All right, next it will be Sam Sharp. Much easier. Sam Sharp, I like you better. Congratulations.
No, read it in your head phonetically.
By the way. All right, next up for the Calypso Marine Deck ruler and cooler pad here. This is going to go to Michael Burton. Lucky guy. Isn't that nice? The black color? That's awesome.
All right, come on. Let's speed it
All
up.
right, sorry. All right.
Throw some names out. Rapid fire. I'm going to start throwing these like Frisbees.
This is going to go to Scott Stevenson and also Val Callahan. Nice. All right, another legendary shirt for Jamie Lee and Jordan Casey. Jordan?
Right on, man. Black or green? Right on.
Okay.
Oh.
Stephen Duffield?
He's coming.
Go ahead now.
Yep.
All right, the next Calypso Marine Deck, that's going to go to Brian Howard.
Did everybody get a return 'em right kit?
Do we have a Brian Howard? Okay, all right.
I gotcha.
You can take that.
Wow, this one's cool.
I like it. It's a pretty color there. All right, let's do a couple more legendary shirts.
You got these 2 more.
All right, couple more legendary. Ariana, you get some legendary. We won't do the pelagic for you, honey. You can get some legendary swag over here. All right, next we will. Pelagic is going to go to Johnny Perrin. All right, one more pelagic that is going to go to Angie Powell. Oh, there you go, honey. That'll be a beautiful color on you. All right, and then the last thing we have here, I've got one more legendary shirt that's going to go also with a legendary hat.
Mark Oates, all right.
Sorry, you're not eligible here, honey. All right, Bruce Goldstein. Bruce, all right. Well, there you go. Congratulations, everyone.
Tim, you got anything else to say about the rodeo?
Definitely want to come and fish the rodeo. I just can't tell you how much fun it really is down there. And just come down for the weigh-ins any night. Next month, we're going to be covering a offshore winter wahoo dolphin tuna fishing. If someone would have asked me 5 years ago when the best time to offshore fish, troll per se was, my answer would have been April through June. If you ask me today, it's November through February. You look at the pictures posted the last 5 years. I have a love-hate relationship with the fads, but what it has opened up our eyes to, it's given people a reason to go out in the winter. And I'm telling you, the winter wahoo dolphin tuna bite is better than the summer. And that's going to be our topic for the last seminar of the year is offshore trolling.
But good luck to everybody in the rodeo. Thanks for listening to us for a while. Anything you need,